Hey guys, so it's been a little bit since I've been on the channel, but I've actually been on vacation out in, well, middle of nowhere. Went to my dad's place. Won't tell you where he lives. He doesn't like visitors. So anyway, we got to go out there, have a good time. He's got a couple old cars to play with. He's got a Model A out there. We got to rebuild the carburetor on and get it running. Got a little drive around the neighborhood with it. He's got an old military style Jeep, similar to mine, but it's a 2A, CJ2A design with some MB stuff thrown on top of it. Got a nice little flathead motor in it. Redid the brakes on it. It had no fluid in it, so we had to fill it up full of fluid and rebleed those. And got it running. Got to drive it around a little bit. My buddy Rich went with me. He had to drive it around a little bit, so he had some fun with it. And then he's got a 1950 truck that he completely rebuilt. It's got an LS motor in it. It sounds like a beast. He doesn't have it on the road yet because wants to get the front end aligned before he takes it on the road, which makes sense. But it sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun to play with. So we went out there with him for the week. Got to work on a lot of cool things, help him around the shop a little bit, take care of some stuff that he needed a few extra hands for. So we just got back from there and brought some toys back with us, and I'll get to those in a minute. But you saw I was taking the Jeep motor apart. This is a 1961 Willys with the F134 Hurricane motor in it. It's been having some problems running a little bit weird. It's binding up like it's got compression, even though the spark plugs are out of it. And at this point, honestly, there's only 3 pistons left in it because here's the number 2 piston, and it still seems to bind up like it has compression in the motor. It's really weird. So we're going to take the rest of it apart. There's some weird gouging in the cylinder walls. I'll see if I can get you a clip of those a little bit later. But yeah, there's 2 in the front and 2 in the back. They're about 1.25 inches apart, perfectly spaced, up and down. I think there's some in the number 3 cylinder as well. I got to get a flashlight down in there and see. There's a lot of other really weird things going on with the block. We're probably not going to rebuild that motor. The original motor, you can see right here over my shoulder. That's the original motor to the Jeep. We're definitely going to pull that one apart and rebuild it. Take it all the way down, do it right, take it to the machine shop, tank it, clean it, put new bearings in it all the way through. So it's going to be a little bit of a build. I'll see if I can get some video as we go. Most of the time I'm doing this by myself, camera phone sitting here on the tripod. So that's why I'm talking to you guys most of the time instead of showing you work. But I'm going to try to see if I can get the GoPro set up on a time lapse and just kind of get some video as we go along, because I know you guys want to see some of the work being done instead of me just talking at you, but we'll get there. So this is the number 2 piston, and you can see at some point, if I can get it in the frame here, it's got a number 2 in it, but it's also got a .04 stamped into it. I think it's, where's it at? That'd be right here. I know it's hard to see, but it tells me that this has probably been bored 40 over at some point. We know this engine's had a lot of machine work done to it, so it's probably been bored out a couple of times at this point. So we're not going to try to rebore it. But one of the things we found, got some interesting wear patterns on the piston. You can see it's wearing a little bit more here. It's got a little bit of wear down here, and it's wearing a lot more on this side, which is a little bit expected because when your piston's going up and down and the crank shaft is making the connecting rod go this and back and forth, you're going to get some wobble like this. And that's why the skirts down here help keep everything straight. So you're going to see wear on those sides. Not unexpected. But some of the interesting things with this connecting rod, when you look at your connecting rods, you want to look at the shoulders here. And most of the time when you take them apart, you'll put numbers in here, numbers, dots, letters, something, so that you know that this rod, this cap always goes to this rod when you put it back together, and all of them are straight. So you don't want to swap these connecting rods around with other caps. But in this one, you can see it's got number 1 in it. It's been scratched through. It's got 4 dots in it, and on this side, it's got 2 dots in it. So it looks like somebody has actually swapped these caps and rods around with each other. So this is probably rebuilt 3 times or more already. And the bearings a little bit hard to see. There you go. Got some really bad scoring, some rough wear on these bearings. Here's the interesting about these bearings. They've only got 45 minutes on them and half a trip around the block. They shouldn't be this scored up. And the wear pattern on them, they're wearing in here on these sides, but not as much down here at the top and bottom. So it's like they're squeezing on the crankshaft journal unevenly. So it's squeezing right here, not here, and it looks like it's gotten something in there. It's definitely, this one's got a very good groove in it. Don't know what all that's about, so we're not going to rebuild this motor. We'll keep this laying around for show and tell. So that one's coming out. Even though we did time and energy swap it, we thought that was a drop-in replacement. We thought it had been rebuilt, but the more that we're digging into it, the more that we know that it has not, and it's a little bit weird. It came out of, we think, an M38, which is a different Jeep than the CJs. They share a lot of parts. There's a lot of commonality, but there's a few things that are just a little bit different. Some of the linkages are different. The flywheel is a little bit different. The starter is a little bit different due to the number of teeth on the flywheel. The plate that goes on the back of the motor between the motor and transmission is a little bit different on this motor. There's also a few other little weird things that we've had to adjust. So we're going to go back to the original motor. We're going to rebuild that. But that's down the road. So we got the Jeep sitting right here. The camera is actually sitting on the fender of the Jeep right now, so I'm not going to spin it around and make you dizzy and look at the Jeep. Right here, that you can't see because it's literally right out of frame, is the go-kart, the Shrine go-kart that we've been working on. It's in here. We've got the rear axle mounted to it. I got some new pieces to it for it that I want to add to it. So they have these trailers that they put on these go-karts, and what they're doing is they have a pin on the bottom of the trailer, and they stick it through basically a bridge bracket, and then they put a cotter pin through it, and it works. It looks kind of cool. But I have a new idea. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of the trailers and I'll put this pin on it. So this looks familiar to you. It's actually a door latch pin from a car. This is actually out of a Chevy 1500 pickup truck. And I have the door latch. So the idea that we're going to do is we're going to take the door latch, put it flat on the truck, build a bridge that we mount this to, and we take the door latch on the trailer, and of course this one's, there we go, it's connected in there, and then when we get ready to disconnect the trailer, we'll pull one of the regular pins like we're unhooking the door, which of course this is all gummed up. I'll have to undo that later, and then disconnect the trailer off of it. So we're going to convert these into latches, very similar to a big rig fifth wheel. This will be under a plate. We're going to make it look like the standard horseshoe type plate is on the truck. We're going to put these on the trailers. So I think that'll look a little bit more interesting. It'll be a lot easier to get there because a lot of times when we're unhooking these from the trailer, from the truck, we're going to get underneath there and it's right on top of the motor where the hot exhaust is, and try to pull this little cotter pin. When I'm done with this assembly, you're going to have your standard leverages that your door latches connect to, but you also have your lock pin assembly, so we'll be able to pull the door latch, pull the lock, and it should slide right out. So I have to clean them up. I got 4 of them and a handful of pins. We'll see if we can dress it up and make it work a little bit more like a regular big rig. The trailers will latch in like a regular truck, and we get ready to undo them. We can have a bar sitting out to the side. We can just pull the trailer off of it. It makes it a lot easier. We don't have to get on under the ground, crawl up underneath the thing. So we'll do that, see if we can get those set up. The other thing I bought got while I was out there, a whole bunch of springs. So in this truck right here, it's got the independent front suspension that we put under it, and it's using the valve springs out of a Mazda Miata. I don't have one. Actually, here we go. Using this as the front spring. Well, I found some of these springs. So These are a little bit more heavy duty. They'll carry the weight a little bit better. So we're going to take the front end apart and put these springs in there and get the little ones out of there. So it should ride a little bit better. In addition to that, so it was one of the things we got to do at Dad's house is he had a couple old engines laying around that he was going to junk. So we pulled the top of the motor apart. Rich had a lot of fun pulling the valve springs out. He hadn't pulled those apart yet, so had to show him how the keepers work and getting leverage on the valve spring to take the weight off the keepers and all that. So that was fun. So while I was out there, I bought another truck, which, you know, my friends here keep laughing at me because every time I go somewhere, I buy another car or truck, whatever. So this time I actually bought a 1979 Chevy LUV 4x4, which I didn't know Chevy LUVs came in a 4x4, but they did for apparently 1 year, according to the internet, 1979. So I bought the truck. It was in the junkyard. I bought the whole truck, had it delivered to the house for $300. We spent the afternoon taking the entire truck apart. We took the cab off of it, took the front end off it, took fenders off of it. It was in terrible, terrible shape. It was pretty much just rusting away. The floorboards were literally 4 different pieces of steel tack welded together. It was horrible. But I wanted the motor out of it. So the old Chevy LUVs have an Isuzu motor, and this one had the Isuzu motor with a 5-speed and a transfer case. And it looks like the transmission and transfer case assembly are kind of built together. So it's a really small, compact unit. And we were talking about dropping it into the Jeep. But it's going to need a little bit more work. It's going to need pretty much a full rebuild before we can put it in the Jeep. But down the road, it'll probably go in the Jeep. So I got the motor, transmission, and a few other odds and ends. I took the steering box off of it. And then Dad's just going to junk the rest of it. He'll probably turn the back of it into a trailer or something. I don't know. But for $300 for the engine, transmission, steering box, and a bunch of other pieces wasn't a bad deal. Plus, we got to take it apart the way we wanted to instead of just, you know, ripping it apart at the junkyard. So I brought that motor home with me. It's in the truck right now. It's raining, so I don't want to be out there uncovering everything in the rain. I also brought home a flathead Ford V8, thanks to Dad. He took it out of his F1 and he was going to do something with it, but he didn't. He gave it to me to put it into the wife's 1946 Ford Super Deluxe. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the C4 transmission out of the Mustang that's in the back, put it with the flathead Ford V8. So I have a Ford V8 with a C4 automatic transmission and shove that into the 46. And then we also got a rear axle, leaf springs to go into the 46, because the old 46 has a torque tube suspension, and all that has to come apart because you can't just change the transmission and put a new drive shaft on it. The drive shaft, the rear suspension, the rear axle, all kind of built as one assembly with a transverse leaf on it, and it's sketchy. So we got some springs. I don't know if they're heavy enough. They probably will be, but we're going to use them as a template to get the frame modified, get leaf hangers on it and all that sort of stuff. Put the axle under it, and we'll see how it sits. If we need heavier springs, that's the easy part to fix. So we're going to have a 373 rear end gear and a rear axle. The bolt pattern matches what's already on the car, so that's really helpful. The axle came out of a 1950 Ford, and it's going into a 46 Ford, so it's pretty close to the same year. So I have the flathead Ford V8 with a manual transmission, the Isuzu motor with motor and transmission, and a rear axle, and a couple of bumpers and leaf springs and a bunch of other stuff sitting in the truck right now. So the next handful of days will be trying to figure out how to get all of that stuff out of there. We left the remnants of the Chevy S10 or the Chevy LUV at Dad's house. He's going to either take it apart and do something with it or scrap it. I don't know. So I did save the important part off of it. So we have the Chevy LUV badge. It's going to get turned into a refrigerator magnet, put up on the toolbox with the Buick, Somerset, Chevy, some other ones I've got up there from other cars I've taken apart over the years. So that's kind of what's been going on. That's why I haven't been posting. I've been riding around, collecting auto parts, filling up my garage. So over the next couple of weeks, you're going to get to see us work on some interesting things, and hopefully we'll get some camera equipment set up in here so you can actually see us work instead of me just talking to you guys all the time. thanks to the new subscribers for clicking like, subscribe. The rest of you guys that are watching this, do the same, and we'll talk to you later.